Right here. Episode 14, Paradox Diaries. Let's go ahead and get it started. All right, it's going to be a good one. Okay, feet parallel, knees slightly bent. I'm going to start bouncing. Here we go, shaking. So last night I noticed I was having trouble passing the time, so I'm going to go ahead and distract myself, which is sort of where the Paradox Diaries got their start. So let's talk about shapes. Now, why am I talking about shapes? I want to bring up a metaphor that allows us to talk about representations of reality. And there's no term that's going to work, so let's just start with shapes. The reason I like shapes is it's a simple bridge metaphor. We can talk about the need for things. So let's sort of get into it. So what is the essence of everything? You could say like it's energy, it's a quark, it's an atom, whatever it is. The question I have, and that doesn't even matter what it is. So there's the essence of matter, and then there's the rules, if you will, that represent how matter interacts. And so the question then becomes, if everything in the universe is made of something, let's say it's energy, well, are rules a thing? And if rules are a thing, are rules made up of energy? And that's sort of where the idea of shapes came from. For me, I was trying to understand, what's the essence of representation? And it got down to, it's a thing. Doesn't matter what the thing is, it's a shape. Okay, great. But what about the rules of interaction? Well, the thing is, there's not so much rules of interaction. So what does that mean? The laws of physics are observations of how things interact, and they are meant to describe expected results. So they are a model of how things work. The important thing there is model. They're not reality. They're not the thing. They are a representation of the thing. And so just because we say a thing behaves this way does not actually mean it behaves that way. Given the observations and given the particular context, things behave in a certain way. As an example, water is weird in that typically things get more dense when they freeze, but water does not, and so water floats. And that's a characteristic of the density of water as it changes when it changes from a liquid to a solid. All right, well, most liquids don't work that way. That's fine. You've also got things like Euclidean and non-Euclidean liquids. So for example, you might have seen examples where if you put something on a surface, it sinks, but if you hit the surface, it's solid, right? And starchy water, I guess, is something you can do. And you can actually run across these surfaces, but if you stop moving, you sink. And so that's a non-Euclidean fluid. So things have the ways they interact. And rather than trying to get to talk about physics, I was just thinking about the idea of shapes. Shapes have a shape, right? So a circle is round. A sphere is even rounder. It's round in 3 dimensions. A square, a cube, whatever. And it's not that the name I'm giving the shape is important. Really, it's not. It's just that 2 shapes are different if they're not exactly the same. And what do you mean by exactly the same? Depends on the frame of reference. And I gave an example in the Paradox Diaries where I showed a circle on a piece of paper, and then underneath that piece of paper was another piece of paper with the same circle. So is that 2 circles or 1 circle? If you look at it like this, there's 1 circle. But if you look at it like this, there's 2 circles. So the observation there is that observation is itself is relative to an observer. So that is, I'm an observer. I'm making an observation of something, and the something is the observed. So again, shapes. Circles interact differently. The nice thing about that is I can just say, look, we don't have to have rules of interaction because there are no rules of interaction. We create a model or a set of rules that we hope sufficiently describe something predictably for whatever level of fidelity we need. So for a long time, Newtonian physics were good enough. And then we went to relativistic physics, even better. And then we went to quantum, right? And depending on the scale, different levels are relative. For example, for GPS, we actually need to take into consideration speed of light or close to speed of light because satellites in geosynchronous orbit, and I don't remember, is it 18,000 miles? The bottom line is when a satellite is at a certain height, it falls at the exact same rate as it needs so that it falls perfectly at the same distance, right? And that is geosynchronous orbit. And it's fast enough that there's an adjustment for time based on how fast it's moving. And so GPS is accurate because it has to take into consideration fluctuations in time based on the difference in speed of a geosynchronous orbit versus being on the surface of the Earth. And it's substantially different enough that it's measurable. So shapes have an interaction, and I don't know why two shapes behave that way, but if you look at, say, a square and a circle, they're going to behave differently. You put a square on a surface, it's probably going to stay there, even if there's a little bit of a slant. You put a circle on a surface, it's also going to stay there because I should be using three-dimensional terms. But if you put a sphere or a globe on a flat surface, it's going to stay there. Or if you put it on a surface that's a little bit of an angle, it'll move. That's just shapes have different ways in which they interact, and you can predict it. And you can even write formulas to describe it. You can describe how it accelerates and so on. But these are just observations. They're pointing at a behavior. They're attempting to capture a description, but they are not movement. They are not the thing. And that's a very important distinction. As soon as you think you're talking about truth, whatever truth is, and science, they're not the same. Science is not about truth. Science is about finding models that approximate reality for a sufficient need, right? And how sufficient depends on the situation. So once you have shapes, and you can talk about, say, two shapes are the same or different. So let's talk about sameness for a second. If I have two spheres and they're about the same weight and the same density, and you put them in the same kind of situation, they're going to basically behave the same, right? So they're similar in that they have, if you look at them from the way we're looking at them, they look round from all the directions and et cetera. They look like a marble. And then depending on where you put them, they're going to behave in about the same way. If one marble is made of dust and another marble is made of, say, atoms from a neutrino star, they're going to have quite a bit different characteristics, even though they might look the same. So the shape is just, again, a lightweight metaphor to give you an idea that things have characteristics. They're inherent in the way they're formed, and you can predict them and you can describe them, but you're just describing and predicting. You're not talking about reality. You're talking about something that is going to work most of the time. So sameness, then, you can expect similar things to have similar behaviors. And so if you look across the universe at all the different things, there's some things that are close enough in shape that you can say, well, these things kind of behave the same way as these things, and those things behave the way as those things. And so that's sameness. Now, identical, like what does it mean to be identical? Two things are identical if in the system of representation, they are the same. That's it. So if you have a clone of me, we're not identical, right? We might be for a moment in time almost identical, but for example, in this world, space is important. And to occupy space in this perspective, the clone of me and I cannot be exactly the same. We can't be in the same location at the same time, as far as I know. Now, there might be versions of reality or some kind of thing that makes it possible. I'm not aware of any. So in my frame of reference, sameness means that there's only one of me and this is it right here. Doesn't matter. I mean, it's just a definition. But that's what makes two things identical as opposed. Sameness is like they're shaped the same, so they behave the same. Identical is they're the same thing. Let me be a little more concrete. Let's say you care about, say, the number of guns for inventory. In the Civil War, they defined the definition of a rifle as the barrel. So if the barrel got destroyed, no more rifle. And the reason they needed to do that was if you repair and you keep repairing stuff, eventually you're going to create new items. And if you care about inventory, then you care about identity. If you don't care about inventory, don't care about identity. Who cares? Doesn't matter. So what kind of information you care about depends upon your need. And that's really just getting at models are partial representations of things that are sufficient for the problem they're trying to solve. Let me be even more boring. If I'm looking at, say, writing a video game and I need to, say, simulate throwing dice, in a video game with visuals, I might care about things like the look of the dice, the color, the reflectiveness if I'm really trying to be really cool. But if I'm looking at, say, the mechanics of the game, none of that matters, right? It's just it's a random value between 1 and 6 or 1 and 20, depending on the dice. And so That's something to take into consideration. At different points in a system, the same idea might have different interpretations depending on the context. And now we can talk about domain-driven development, because in domain-driven development, what you do is you say, look, there's a bounded box. It's a bounded context. Within this bounded context, we're going to use these terms, and they're going to mean this to us. Now, you may have the same term, and that's fine, but in my bounded context, when I talk about, say, an account has these 4 fields. Your account might have 27 fields. I don't care. My account has 4. And if we need to somehow have those 2 different kinds of accounts in 2 different systems because they have 2 entirely different uses, but there still needs to be some kind of connection, then we need to make some kind of connection. So we need to make an external ID or something like that that keeps them in sync. Who knows? It doesn't really matter. What problem are you trying to solve, and is that even important? So your models of representation are going to be relative to what you need. And really what we're saying is an observer makes an observation of something that's observed. That's the triad, right? When you're talking about any situation, minimum definition to be complete is 3, right? Who's there? A and B, party A, party B, an observer. You can always have more, but you have to have at least 3. And more importantly, when I say 3, you have to have 3 categories of things, not 3 things. So if I see 10 Lego bricks, that's one category of things, and I'm looking at them. I'm one category of things. So we're talking about one observer category, or one thing, at least one thing in the category of things being observed, at least one thing in the category of doing the observer, the observed, so the observer, and then one thing in the category of either a specific observation or a desire for an observation. Notice that I might go from I don't know to I don't know. So now I go from having no need for observation to observing that, there's something I need to observe. And then at some point then I start to have higher fidelity. But that initial awareness goes from complete non-knowledge, non-distinction, non-differentiation to I didn't know, I don't know, but there's something there. I don't know what it is, but there's something. So now I've observed a difference. That's the triad. And then the further I refine it, the more I'll know about it. But it's always going to be me, observer, that, observed, and a new observation. And maybe new observations will make old observations less relevant, incorrect, or just a bridge model that got us to where we needed to be. So now here's what time is it been? Okay, great. I've distracted myself more than enough, and I got to models, and that's what I wanted to get to. Okay, cool. So what I'm going to do is tonight I started with a fairly high heart rate variability. My pulse coming in was 58, and my heart rate variability was 62, that's normally what it is when I wake up in the morning. Now I'm feeling a little more awake. My heart rate variability is almost going to be lower, certainly. I don't think it's going to be higher. But what I wanted to do tonight, I'm just going to do one stretch, asymmetrical. Do the one I did last night, because when I did the front splits, my heel is bothering me a little bit. But I still want to do some more front split stuff. This will allow me to stretch where I need to, primarily in my groin, and I won't involve my heel at all. So I'm going to work on the front splits again today. And the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to use a chair. I'm going to put one leg up. I'm going to put a pillow down on the ground for the back knee, and then slowly over time, I'm going to slide my back knee further back and basically extend the groin stretch. I'm going to get my hamstring on the front leg. I'm going to get my hip flexor on the back leg. This is a lot like blaster pose where we're on the floor. I'm just using the chair. And also, I'm going to make sure I have blocks for balance. So that's my plan. And what I might do, I might play with, at the end, I might do a quick round of PNF. I don't know. I'm not sure if I'm going to do it in this position, but I'm going to go ahead and get started here. And in the background here, right now my HRV is 43, so that's not a surprise. My pulse is 86, and it's just varying. So I'm going to go ahead and put this into deep flexibility mode. And here we go. Let's do this. Okay, so I want to make sure I've got a little bit of padding right here so I don't get anything from the metal. I'm going to turn my hips so they're square. I'm I've got a good amount of, ooh, that's right there. I've got a lot of tightness going on my abductors, AB abductors, and here we go. Right here, this is a nice place to start. So first observation, I started with shaking, and I feel like I start to notice my muscles letting go more quickly in the start of a stretch after shaking. So I really do think it's kind of just loosening everything up and preparing things. Even though I was more parasympathetic dominant at the time, I was also tired. And something to take in consideration, I was tired and I didn't want to stretch. Part of the reason I shook was I know that if I start shaking after a few minutes, it's going to put me in a mood to want to actually do just a little bit of exercise. It's not going to wake me up. It wasn't that. I could have gone to sleep and I would have been fine, but I probably wouldn't have slept as well as I'm going to by doing a little bit of shaking and a little bit of stretching. So the shaking balanced me out, brought me into more balance from a sympathetic and parasympathetic perspective. And that's going to allow me to spend more time stretching, because if I'm too out of it, I might fall asleep. I might have trouble maintaining my balance. And that lack of focus is going to make the stretches more difficult and more mentally consuming. So the shaking is a really good calming, neutralizing, balancing effect that seems to really help stretching. I actually think this is more intense than the front splits because it allows me to target in a way because I'm not holding any weight. This is insane. Okay, now I've got a little bit of weirdness going on the outside of my leg there. I'm going to bring it back more centered there. Oh, and poor Chesh is at the door and the door is closed. I have to wait. I'm not going to come out of the pose since I'm already 3 minutes in. Okay, I'm going to stop at 4 minutes. The reason I'm stopping is I'm getting a weird feeling on this outside of my knee right here. And that's a ligament thing, and I'm not going to mess with that. So I'm going to do 4 minutes, figure out, I'll do the same thing on the other side, so I'm symmetrical. And then I'm going to, if I have the same thing, I'll have to make an adjustment. But this will also allow me to allow the kitty in. Come on in, Chesh. Hi, buddy. Sorry about that. Come on in. Here. Kiki, come here. All right, other side, same thing. Now, I didn't notice that last night, the thing on my leg right here, so I'm wondering if this extra height is it. So I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, 4 minutes though. and then we'll see where it goes from there. Josh, stop it, buddy. Stop. Come on, move. No. Please. Dude, seriously. Get out, please. Thank you. Can't have you bumping your head on my leg like that, buddy. I'm sorry. Hey, would you stop? Just stop. Dude, seriously, why are you doing that? You, you got to stop doing that shit. Oh, wow. Okay, come here, Kiki. I'm done with that big stretch, so I can now pet you a little bit. Oh, my hip flexors are definitely. Okay, there we go. So now what I'll do ahead and I'm gonna stretch the front a little bit here, and eventually I'll get my ankles pretty well stretched as well as my shins. Hey, Kitty, are you gonna rub on the chair? Okay. So in this pose, I'm gonna have my knees close together. I'm not. They're not gonna touch. They're just not. Right now, I've got my feet somewhat spread. My bum is not on the ground, but if I take my feet a little bit wider, then slowly, I'm gonna get a bigger stretch here. I'm getting a lot of additional tension in my knees, and also I'm really extending the dorsiflexion. Sorry, wrong. Plantar flexion. Plantar flexion. I'm pointing of my ankles, and then slowly over time, I'll lean back. Now, of course, I think I have stuff in my way, but uh, if I were to try to lean all the way back right now, my body would spasm. I can't do it. It takes 3, 4, sometimes close to 5 minutes before I can get my shoulders all the way on the ground, and sometimes I don't. But throughout the pose, right now, I'm getting a really good stretch. I don't need to go any further back. But I do like the feeling of going all the way back and then extending my hands straight behind me and then pushing my knees down to the ground. But that is several minutes away. Start getting a cramp in my right foot. Ooh. I don't like doing that, but I also like getting cramps in my foot. Let's do that again. Again, I don't normally recommend getting out, but right there. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and take care of that. What I'm going to do is simply find where the cramp is, right about there, and I'm just going to hold it for a while. I'm going to really just, basically I'm doing trigger point or really PNF. The difference is instead of squeezing the muscle from the inside, I'm pressing it from the outside. So it's actually, I actually don't know if it's the same mechanism. With PNF, you're overloading the nervous system. With trigger point, I guess it is the same thing. I'm gonna have to check on that. I bet you it's the same mechanism. I would guess it's the same mechanism. Ooh, got it. That's really it right there. It's moving. Ooh. Okay, I think I got it. Let's see. All right, let's see if I can get back into this pose. Let me go ahead and do it this way. Okay. All right, I think that's enough. Okay. My pulse dropped down to 55 there at the peak, or at the trough. Let's see, 50. Yeah, 55. 57. All right. Well, tell you what, I'm going to do a little bit of shaking to integrate all that, and then I'm going to call it a night. Got my hamstring stretched, got my hip flexor stretched, got my calves stretched. That was a good round of stretching. And it didn't bother my heel, my left heel at all. I did have something going on with the outside of my right knee, so I had to cut the time down, but better that than do some damage. And at 4 minutes into a pose, I'm not going to try to go back and make an adjustment. I'll go back and do it again, but I'll just do it again tomorrow. Doesn't have to be right. I got something out of it. I definitely got some good stretching in. I didn't injure myself. And I've learned I don't know, now I don't know. So I don't know exactly what it is, but now I know I've got something to look for. So that's an example of a infinite change of perspective. I didn't know I had an issue. Now I know I have an issue. Don't know what the issue is, but I'll figure it out, or I'll make an adjustment so that the issue doesn't happen. And what I'll do is I'll look for structural changes so that it'll just naturally takes care of itself. Maybe it's lowering the knee. Maybe it's slightly opening my leg up. Maybe it's bending my back leg. I don't know. I'll try it. But I do know that whatever I was feeling, that was a feeling that it wasn't painful at all, but it was like, that's not a good feeling. And the location is not where I want to be locating my stretches. And so that's why I backed off. All right, I'm going to call it quick night. Have a good night.